Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where, oh boy, today's episode has a theme. And if you regularly watch Morning Movie News, you know how much I love to be able to do that. And this isn't just the three stories of the day, this is a straight flush, including the viewer question. So, what's today's theme? Directors. And the first story is about director Joe Carnahan and his next gig, which he revealed yesterday to be the Hollywood version of The Raid, which surprisingly shocked a number of people that such a remake, or reimagining as Joe Carnahan exists, was even in the works, which is weird because it's been in the works since The Raid came out in 2011 when Sony acquired the rights to remake the film, an English language version, and they also distributed it stateside as well. As we've discussed before, that's usually the way the deal works. They'll say, oh, we'll distribute your, it's really an underhanded deal, because they'll say, okay, we'll distribute your film in North America, but in exchange, you have to give us the rights to remake it. But then, because they have the rights to remake it, they have no real interest in pushing the movie to be a huge success here, because then who's going to want to see the English language version, right? You're seeing a similar situation happen with Tony Erdmann, which is now going to be, it's a foreign language contender for Best Picture. But now, since Jack Nicholson and Kristen Wiig are going to remake it English language, no one's going to watch Tony Erdmann now. Although Tony Erdmann's not quite The Raid. Because, The Raid was an action movie, and that's a little bit something easier to cross over because, less dialogue means less subtitles and less reading. So anyway, Sony Pictures Classics never really pushed The Raid stateside, but it was still, because it's so good, discovered by a number of at least genre fans, action fans. And they even made a sequel, The Raid 2, which was absolutely fantastic. But they've had a hard time putting together this English language version. Although it's weird, even with the two Raid films, nobody's been able to come out of that franchise and cross over to Hollywood at all. It's Gareth Evans, these films were made in Indonesia, but Gareth Evans, I believe, is from the UK. Let me check real fast. Yes, he's from Wales. So he went to Indonesia because, very cleverly, he felt that would be a better film market to break into. And it's weird. He certainly broke into the Indonesian film market, but it did not create a path to Hollywood for him. And he continues to make films largely, I believe, out of Indonesia. So he hasn't gotten the call for any movies, despite them really desperately needing directors in Hollywood. And Iko Uwais and Yaya Ruyan, who is the stunt coordinator on these films as well, they got called up for The Force Awakens, but then you might recall they had kind of like a somewhat, I think, insulting cameo, and that they made them look ridiculous. Like, I think they gave Iko Uwais like Harley Quinn man buns, and I was, Harley Quinn sporting them in the comics right now, and I'm just like, what'd you do to Iko Uwais? And they didn't really have any fighting to do in the movie, in Star Wars either. So, and they just never have been able to cross over. I mean, if Vin Diesel's not even hiring you for his movies, Tony Jaa's getting the call instead, I don't know what Iko Uwais, what else he can possibly do. Maybe they can give him a part in this Hollywood Raid, to pay it forward, Joe Carnahan. I think that may be, actually, come to think of it, a really nice way to maybe make people not hate this remake. Or, I'm sorry, reimagining. So Joe Carnahan took to social media yesterday and he said, oh, I'm the one who's going to do The Raid. Because for a while it was going to be Patrick Hughes who did Expendables 3. And remember, everybody was like, why would you hire that guy to do The Raid? He seems not good. The Raid should have someone of a little bit higher caliber. And I think Joe Carnahan's high caliberness is debatable. He did like the A-Team, but he also did The Grey, which, I think people have some respect for. But anyway, but Patrick Hughes eventually dropped out, although he is doing The Hitman's Bodyguard coming up with Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson. So, his career might still turn out nicely as well. But anyway, Joe Carnahan has landed this Raid reimagining, and Frank Grillo, who was attached before, is still attached, which is odd. His agent is amazing that he can keep him attached to this. If I were, well, it's XYZ Films is the ones that are remaking it. I have not really, I don't even know if they're an American company, actually. I've never really heard of them. Maybe they think Frank Grillo is a great idea. I don't know. But Frank Grillo is still attached. And they said, we're just going to take the idea of The Raid about fighting in a building and like just make it an action spectacle. And they actually name-checked John Wick and said, well, we're pals with those guys. I'm like, still? after you just said you're basically going to copy their movie? I'd be really surprised if David Leitch and Chad Stahelski still want to talk to you. I'm sure, I don't know, maybe they'll talk to him in a chilly manner. I'd be like, good luck with your John Wick Raid ripoff. I'm going to rip off 2 movies, said Joe Carnahan. And also, I've seen Joe Carnahan's work, and I think while it's certainly fine and sometimes good, Chad Stahelski really raised the bar with John Wick 2, and I would be really surprised if, Frank Grillo was like, what, the poor man's Keanu Reeves? I mean, I just think that the comparison will not work in the Raid, whatever they call this, his favor. But the other point that I wanted to make is that they already did a reimagining of the Raid in the United States, and that's with the Dredd film with Carl Urban. It was just absolutely fantastic. It also took place in a single building, and it came out at around the same time. And you might recall everybody was like, hey, that's just Dredd. I mean, that's just the Raid you guys did over there, right? But it was a fabulous film, and nobody really paid attention to that movie either, unfortunately. And I think to this day, people, well, the momentum is certainly slowed down, but there are still those of us holding out hope for another Dredd. Even Carl Urban would still love to do it. He did some great chin acting because he had to wear the helmet throughout the entire film. Not like Stallone. Stallone was like, I'm a movie star. I'm not taking this off. I'm not wearing this helmet the whole time. But Carl Urban was like, the character wears the helmet. And he did a great job. If you've never seen Dredd, you really should watch Dredd. You put on your list Dredd, The Raid, and The Raid 2. But it's sad because I don't know how many people will watch The Raid or go back and visit it, especially once this remake or reimagining comes out. But I'm curious, does this sound good to you? I think Frank Grillo, I don't know, particularly after the comments that he made while promoting Age of Captain America Civil War. He made some really at the very best, misguided racial comments. And so I don't really know what Frank Grillo's future holds for him, but I wouldn't want to have my movie go along for the ride. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day was from, a day ago. I'm still getting over a cold, but this was Disney has chosen the director for their live-action Mulan film, and it's Niki Caro, whose name has been on a lot of shortlists as people look for female directors. For instance, she was on Marvel's shortlist, it was rumored, for Captain Marvel. I think she's a horrible choice, and I'm very scared that this is who they've chosen to direct a live-action Mulan movie. But let's discuss. Let me show you how I came to that concern. So, Niki Caro has been working for quite some time, but her big breakout film was Whale Rider. And that is what really concerns me, because I don't want the Whale Rider version of Mulan, right? I mean, that was a very culturally sensitive film, and I don't really think that Mulan needs to be like really worried about. I mean, of course it should honor China, but I don't want. Basically, my question in my notes was, what is the #1 priority for Disney's live-action Mulan? Is it to be sensitive to Chinese culture? Is it to be sensitive to gender identity? Or is it to show the complexities of going to war and sacrifice and, and family and honor? And I'm solely in the last camp there, like that's where I feel, I mean, I think those other things can all be visited, right? And maybe not even, some people want to see Mulan explore gender identity and some people want to see Mulan explore gender roles, maybe both. And I think that a really good live-action Mulan movie, I hope it's as complex as what it looks like they're doing with the live-action Beauty and the Beast film that's about to come out. But sure, it can touch on all of those things, but you have to pick the #1 thing. And just like I think Beauty and the Beast seems to be focusing very much on, being ahead of your time and, female empowerment, right? Turning the Beast into like a ladies' man. I think it's all, that's a really good path to go on. So I would like to see, I think the safest also bet for Mulan is, because it's being made by an American studio, and, you want it to be a family film for all ages, I think you want to focus on the honor and the family and the war aspects. I mean, we've all said the whole reason we want a live-action Mulan is to really show those battle sequences. So I don't really know if I don't have any faith in Niki Caro to be able to deliver me those battle sequences. So what has she done? Well, it's because Whale Rider was a long time ago. And also, to be fair, though, Patty Jenkins looks to me like she's doing a great job on Wonder Woman, although yesterday I was talking to some people who said they didn't think Wonder Woman looked good, which blew my mind and terrified me. But anyway, I think Wonder Woman looks great, and Patty Jenkins is doing that with very little experience, so there's hope. But anyway, Patty Jenkins, of course, worked on Monster with Charlize Theron, and interestingly enough, Niki Caro has also worked with Charlize Theron on North Country. She also directed McFarland USA, which I actually liked quite a bit, but a big focus of that movie was cultural aspects, the Mexican-American community in McFarland, which I think was an important part of that story. But again, I worry about what the balance will be in a live-action Mulan movie, because McFarland USA was a smaller film, and not a fantasy film. The priorities, I think, are different. And then The Zookeeper's Wife that's coming up is also her movie. And it's interesting because she will be the other woman at Disney who has been trusted with $100 million plus budget. And the other person, of course, is Ava DuVernay with A Wrinkle in Time. But both of these films seem very soft to me, and I think I worry about what their priorities are. I think it's wonderful that Ava DuVernay wants to show a mixed race family, but I wonder what's the priority. Is the priority the mixed race family, or the girls liking science and kids liking science and trying to just introduce kids in general to science, right? What's the main goal? And I think if the main goal is science and the main goal is war, with an undercurrent of those more social justice warrior elements, the films will do quite well. But if they come across as like a story about mixed race families and gender issues, or Chinese culture, I think you're going to have a harder sell. So I know this is very scary to me, because I don't want this to be a case where in both circumstances women made the wrong choice, right? The female director made the wrong choice. Now, this you would think would be an opening for Sony to maybe come in there and do maybe a little more aggressive Mulan, and therefore maybe be able to beat Disney at the box office, for somebody to beat Disney at the live-action fairy tale game for once. But I don't know, because they've hired Alex Graves to direct, who's primarily a TV director, you might recall. They hired him a couple months ago. He has done some Game of Thrones episodes, but none of like the really big ones, where everybody's talking about it. One of those second to last of the season episodes, that's not him. So I'm surprised that those people don't get called up for movie gigs. It's weird, but Alex Graves got it. I worry that he would turn out a lot like, I forget the guy's name, I think Alan Taylor on Thor the Dark World. See? We don't even remember his name. All right, so that's the second story of the day, and I'm curious not only what you think of Niki Caro from Mulan, but also what do you think the priorities on these films should be, both personally, but also from a business perspective, understanding that you need to sell it to a large audience. Because, if you have a $100 million budget, you need to sell a lot of movie tickets to justify that budget. And that's even before advertising, keep in mind. All right, so the third story of the day, talking about female directors, is that I've been seeing them trying to really push this hashtag Oscars So Male. This year Oscars So Black was not an issue, thankfully. But now there's been some people trying to push Oscars So Male because there are no women nominated in the directing category. And I also believe, not in the screenwriting category either. And so people are like, let's try and make this a thing, and it's not catching on. And I don't think it should catch on. I think the crucial difference is that women aren't doing the work right now. The problem with Oscars So Black is that there were snubs. Work should have been recognized that wasn't. Although Ava DuVernay, I believe, yes, she was snubbed. That was a legitimate snub for Selma. So they could have called it out then, but she got rolled into Oscars So White. So anyway, Oscars So Male this year, I don't really think you can point to a woman where you're like, she should have been nominated for Best Director or Best Screenplay. I mean, there just isn't anyone. So I think that women, and I saw, the reason I was inspired to talk about this today is that there was a Hollywood Reporter thing from a producer, studio executive who didn't want to be identified, and they said, oh, we should use fear and money to make people hire women. And I'm like, nah, that's really not the way to go, right? I mean, I think you can't force someone to hire somebody and get good work out of it. I think it has to be organic. So also I'd like to point out that Catherine Bigelow, she did the work with The Hurt Locker, and she won. She was nominated, and she won. Although she thanked James Cameron in her speech and said she called him every day on set and basically gave him like half the credit for the win. So that was, you don't see a lot of male directors going up and doing that. All right, thanks. I've never seen a male director say, I called my wife every day for advice and she really helped me out with the directing, so this is hers too. That might even be true to some degree because, they always say the women behind the man, but that's hilarious. All right, so anyway, Patty Jenkins, talking about commercial films, Patty Jenkins this year with Wonder Woman, I have very high hopes for that. There's a lot riding on Patty Jenkins and Wonder Woman, boy. She must be feeling the pressure. But I decided to look at 2016's box office, and I wanted to see how many women-directed films that made it into the top 10. Top 100, I'm sorry, top 10. Nobody. This is zero. But how about the top 100 grossing films of the year worldwide, right? So there were 3. So number 38 was the first entry, and that was Bridget Jones's Baby, and that was Sharon Maguire directed that. Interestingly, 2 of the 3 are European films, and they didn't do well stateside. It did $24.3 million in the United States, but $187 overseas. That's amazing. Then right after it, interestingly, was Me Before You, fabulous movie. I saw all 3 of these films. Bridget Jones's Baby was fine, but Me Before You I thought was actually quite good. This was directed by Thea Sharrock, also from the UK. That made 56.2 here, but 151 overseas. And then number 76 was the third, Jodie Foster, good old Jodie Foster with Money Monster, that George Clooney, Julia Roberts film, which made $41 million domestically, $52.2 overseas. Jodie Foster, I think that, the first 2 are very typically like they're chick flicks, right? Very well directed chick flicks, particularly Me Before You. I thought that was great, and I thought that benefited, I think, to some degree from having a female director. But the great thing about Money Monster is that Jodie Foster is not she's a director. The ideal situation is that you're not like, was this directed by a woman? Like, you shouldn't be able to tell. And because Ava DuVernay was also on the cover of Hollywood Reporter with a quote saying that women need to fight for their stories, fight to tell their stories. And I think that's the wrong approach. Some women can fight to tell their stories, and those will be the ones that probably get nominated for awards and make the small little indie movies, right? But I think if women really want to be in the mix, they have to be like men, and there have to be different types of directors, right? Just like there are different types of male directors, there are going to be different types of female directors. And right now, there really only seems to be one type of female director, or 2, and that's the chick flick, right? And then there's also the artistic, SJW director. And that's why I'm glad that Patty Jenkins is emerging. I think she could do a lot. TV, of course, is a different situation. That's very exciting. TV leading the way in a lot of ways right now. And also TV led the way with interesting roles for women, interestingly. So maybe this is going to change. But for instance, women direct top series episodes all the time. Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, Suits, The Night Manager. And none of these shows are female-centric or feel like they should be directed by women. So that's fantastic. But what my feeling is where are the clever breakout indie films from women directors? Where is a female director doing something like 10 Cloverfield Lane? Where are the genre films from women? That's going to really be the game changer when you get a Jordan Voight-Roberts female equivalent. That's what they need. That's what really needs to happen, I think, to break it. Scarlett Johansson is doing a lot to even the playing field. Jennifer Lawrence. That's, and that's because they're commercially viable. And that's what, money is really important in that regard. So that person said fear and money should be the motivators. I don't think you should ever motivate anyone from fear. And they said basically they should put a stigma on anyone who doesn't hire a woman. And I don't think that's fair at all. But yeah, so women, and that would solve Kathleen Kennedy's problem where she's like, I can't find a woman to direct a Star Wars movie. You need to get, and I think that women need to be able to be hired and not have to worry that they are going to try and get all touchy-feely hearts and unicorns when they make the movie, right? You're like, oh, I'd like to hire a woman to direct Star Wars, but can I be confident that it's just going to be a great Star Wars movie and not take on some kind of like SJW matters, right? I mean, that's really an important distinction. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this last one. It's quite controversial. Now let's go to the final question, the viewer question of the day, and that's from Off Demind. This is from a few days ago. We were talking about treatments, and so I thought this question was great. So Off Demind, great name, says, this was tweeted to me, says, at Grace Randolph, been watching a lot of videos and I hear the term treatment being thrown around a lot, for instance with Split 2. So what's a treatment? Great question. If you're a director who often writes, M. Night Shyamalan being the example at hand here, you will be asked to put together a treatment. So this is who you're asked to do. So this is why I think it's good for you to know what a treatment is. So a treatment is something that you prepare before you do a script. Because a lot of times, there's 2 reasons for that. One is that they don't want you to write a whole script before they approve it, right? Because that takes much longer. It takes just a couple of days to write a treatment, where it takes a few weeks to write a script, a first draft. So they're like, okay, why don't you write a treatment at first? And then also, another reason is that the studio wants to make sure they're happy with the direction it's going in before you go too far along, right? They want to have a say in it. So it's really basically, it's Hollywood speak for an outline. So a treatment is you write out the whole idea of what will happen in the script and the 3-act structure so that you can confer with the development executives and the producers to make sure everybody's happy with the way the story's developing. And then once the treatment is approved, you go into the script writing stage. So that's what a treatment is, if you're wondering. And M. Night Shyamalan said he had an 11-page treatment. A script is a script is a page a minute, so they're anywhere from 90 to 120 pages usually. So that's the rule of thumb. So his 11-page treatment is the beat by beat layout of the script that he wants to write for Split 2. So he's going to then go show that to Jason Blum. I'm sure that it's going to be more expensive than Split was, so he especially needs approval. So he's probably going to go to Jason Blum and Universal. They're going to look at it. He's going to probably show it to Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, James McAvoy, and say, what do you guys think of this? And then everyone's going to make sure they're on the same page. And then once that gets the go-ahead, he can move ahead with the actual script. So that's what a treatment is. Thanks for such a great question, Off to Mind. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Please write down below today's top 3 stories, Off to Mind's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.